obligation that goes back over 50 years.
All right, Senator Kyl, let's move on to the very contentious issue of this START treaty that you're in the center of. This is the nuclear arms reduction treaty that the administration has negotiated with Russia, that the president said is a priority for this lame duck session. You seem to be the key player here as the opponent here in the Senate. You've said over the past couple of weeks, I think there is no chance that the START treaty can be completed in the lame duck session. Is that still your view?
It is, and it's more a view of reality rather than policy. If the leader of the Senate, Senator Reid, were to allow a couple of weeks for full debate and amendment of the resolution of ratification, then theoretically there would be time. But he has made it clear that he has a different agenda in mind, and I think clearly they've got to set some priorities here. Are they going to deal with the funding of the government for the remainder of the fiscal year? They've got to do that. Are they going to deal with the issue which is on everybody's mind that you mentioned earlier, and that is to ensure that we don't have a big tax increase, the largest tax increase in the history of the country? These are higher priority items, and if we do those things and then potentially deal with some of the other political issues that Senator Reid has said he wants to deal with, in that event, then there would not be time.
Well, but Senator Durbin, here's the issue. Can you get around Senator Kyl? Do you have the votes? You need 9 votes among Republicans. Can you get there without him?
I can tell you that when it comes to this issue, we respect Jon Kyl. I think he's worked as hard as any other senator, maybe more than any senator, to understand this issue and to be an important part of the policy decisions that we face. But here is the reality. We live in a dangerous world. The failure of the United States Senate to ratify the START treaty immediately is going to pose a danger to the United States and its security. And let me give a historical analogy. It wasn't that long ago that a Republican president appealed to Congress on a bipartisan basis. It was President George W. Bush, after 9/11, to rewrite the architecture of our intelligence agencies with a new Department of Homeland Security. Senator Susan Collins, the chairman of the committee at that time, and a Republican, Senator Joe Lieberman, a Democrat, got together and did it. They constructed this new scenario that has made us safer as a nation, and they did it during a lame duck session. There is no excuse for us to ignore this responsibility and to say we'll wait several months.
Well, Senator,
while we wait, there'll be no inspectors on the ground in Russia to make sure that their nuclear weapons are safe and treaty compliant.
The issue is Senator Kyl, what do you need all the time for? The New York Times reported this on Friday about your role. Privately, administration officials expressed anger and bewilderment at Mr. Kyl, contending that they had given him virtually everything he'd sought. Arms control advocates have been more vocal. My conclusion is that he's acting in bad faith, said Daryl Kimball, executive director of the Arms Control Association. He asked for more earlier in the fall, and they've delivered. Is this anything other than trying to snub the president, Senator?
Of course. Let me reiterate what I said before. Harry Reid, the leader of the Senate, can bring the START treaty up anytime he wants to. But he has a different agenda. He's made some promises to some political constituencies. He wants to do the DREAM Act in order to appeal to certain segments of the Hispanic community. The Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy to appeal to the gay and lesbian community. To appeal to the unions, he wants to do the so-called firefighters' federal unionization bill. In addition to various political commitments that he's made to do legislation in the lame duck session, we have to fund the government for the remaining 10 months of the fiscal year. We have to deal with some expiring provisions like it. May I just finish, David?
What's your issue? Well, what's your issue with the treaty?
As I told you, my issue is that you can't do everything. I was stating it as a matter of reality, not a matter of policy. How can Harry Reid do all of the things we've talked about, deal with the expiring tax provisions, and in addition to that, deal with the START treaty, which by itself could probably take at least 2 weeks?
How long did the last START treaty take to ratify? How much debate?
We have 3 weeks to go before the Christmas recess. And there are, in my opinion, a lot of amendments that have to be raised on this treaty. And as a result, colleagues are going to offer those amendments. Is Harry Reid just going to shut it off and say, we only have 3 days?
Senator, my question is, how long did the last START treaty take to get through Congress?
It's not comparable to this START treaty. The last START treaty was a 3-page document. It was agreed to by virtually every, in fact, I think the vote was unanimous, or maybe there was one dissenting vote. That's not going to be the case with this treaty, on which there are a lot of issues.
Senator Durbin?
Well, I can just tell you that people across America who subscribe to cable ask for refunds when they turn on C-SPAN and see the Senate sit there day after day doing nothing, lurching from filibuster to filibuster. Come on, let's be reasonable, let's be constructive, let's be bipartisan. We can get these things done. Let's roll up our sleeves and do it. Senator Kyl has raised legitimate issues, but the fact is we can do all of the things he mentioned, debate them and vote on them in a responsible way before we break for Christmas. To do otherwise is really to create a dangerous situation. I agree with Senator Richard Lugar. It is time for us to step up as a nation and face the reality that we will be safer with the START treaty. And I might say to Senator Kyl, consider the situation in Iran. They just announced yesterday that they were going to fire up their nuclear reactor. If it's for peaceful domestic purposes, all well and good. But if it's part of an agenda to build a nuclear weapon, it's a danger to the world. Russia has helped us in dealing with this threat in Iran. To ignore and push aside the START treaty at this moment does not help our relationship with Russia in this critical issue of an Iranian nuclear program.
Senator Kyl, I just want to zero in on one point, though, which I don't feel like I've gotten an answer to, which is substantively. And by the way, the old START treaty took a matter of days. You say it's not comparable, but that is the reality, that it doesn't take 3 weeks necessarily. But what substantively are you not getting from the White House that you want to say, yes, I can support this?
First of all, let me quote the Washington Post, which directly addressed the question that you asked. No calamity will befall the United States if the Senate does not act this year. And in response to the charge that somehow we need to do this for the urgency of needing verification, Associated Press did a fact check on that allegation, said the urgency is political. Even the administration concedes the security risk is not immediate. So there is not a time pressure to do this now as opposed to 2 months from now. But specifically to your question, there are a series of issues that relate, first of all, to provisions of the treaty itself and how it deals with missile defense and conventional prompt global strike and some other issues. Secondly, you have the question of modernization, which is the thing, as Senator Durbin pointed out, that I have been primarily focused on. And third, you have questions extraneous to the treaty, but within the context, which is this all that's standing between us today and the administration trying to negotiate even deeper, further cuts, which it's indicated that it wants to do in its march toward global zero, something that a lot of us disagree with. So there are a lot of considerations, and if you would like just one or two very specific, one of the things the administration has done with regard to building our nuclear complex back up, replacing the old Manhattan-era 1940s buildings, for example, facilities, is to create 2 new buildings, which are going to be necessary, one in Tennessee, one in New Mexico. And these buildings are very costly, but what they've done is to stretch out the cost so that it doesn't show up in the 10-year projections, now to be completed by the year 2023 and 2024. That's too long. We need those facilities before then. And as a result, there probably will be amendments or at least an effort to try to get the administration to fund those a little earlier. Every year we delay is a cost of $200 million, money that could be saved if we can get those facilities constructed a little bit earlier.
I want to move on to some of the domestic agenda and some of the showdowns on matters like taxes and spending. But first, we're coming off of this holiday weekend, and there was so much drama around the TSA screening procedures, the invasive pat-downs at the